Welcome to the Decide to Move podcast, helping entrepreneurs like you make smart, pivotal shifts in your life and business. Tune in each episode for inspiring stories from brilliant business minds and trailblazers to find out how they made their big moves and how you can too. Now here's your host, author, speaker, business strategist, CEO, and founder of Decide to Move, Monica M. Bijou.
Hey, welcome to Decide to Move podcast. I'm super excited to have you with me again today. I have with me an amazing speaker. She is a best-selling author, a mindset maverick, and a brain optimizing expert. And she's here to teach you as female entrepreneurs what is keeping you from going above that six-figure ceiling. And oftentimes we want to know that we hit six figures, and some of us are still in the fives, some of us are six figures. And as entrepreneurs that are working and listening to Decide to Move podcast, you're making pivotal shifts in your lives. And especially what's happening right now with the pandemic and things that are happening, we as entrepreneurs want to know how we can continue to monetize and go above where we were before to where we want to go. And so going above those six figures, Paula Oleska is here to teach us all about that. How are you doing today, Paula?
Hey, Monica. So good to see you. I'm great,
Yes.
considering the circumstances.
Yes, but we can thrive and be great in the midst of a storm. And that's basically the way that it is. And how do you continue to move beyond that is what's super huge and important. So can you tell our listeners and those that are viewing us via video who you are and all about how you became an expert in the brain and optimizing it?
So, my story is completely different from most other entrepreneurs. I'm a surprised entrepreneur. And I thought if I write my biography, it will be called Accidental Businesswoman. I absolutely was not planning to do that. I grew up in Poland when it was still a communist country. So there was no entrepreneurship, no private business, not even banking system. So when I came to this country, I didn't know how to write a check. Um, so my original plan was to finish university, and I had a master's in English, and I was going to be a translator. I love languages and translation. And but I developed other interests. Um, so the first turning point was that I saw a visiting company that came to Warsaw from London. It was a company from the Martha Graham School in London. Martha Graham is a pioneer of modern dance. And I didn't know anything about Martha Graham, but I saw this company and I had a whole body reaction that this is what we should be doing. And it was impossible to do it. And I was also very shy and not completely had no confidence in my abilities or approaching people like who I consider these faraway authorities. But I managed to do it. So I turned my life around and went to London, became a modern dancer. And then eventually they said, there is more dance in the States, so you should go to the States. Well, that was another impossible task for many reasons. And without going into details, I eventually came to the States and went to the Graham School in New York. But also, I was developing interest in singing. So I was, and let's see, I was, when I was in the Graham School, I loved the program, but I got injured. And I had to stop dancing or even moving for a while. And it got me into exploring different movement modalities to rehabilitate myself instead of having a surgery. So that opened my interest in the whole holistic field of different types of healing and body work. And I came across this fantastic technique that has to do with balancing muscles. So very few people still know about it, very few people use it. Muscle testing became popular. It's very watered down, I must say, but very few people know how to balance muscles. But it's a miraculous technique that very quickly allows you to strengthen a muscle response and takes care of pain and injuries. So I was I very quickly started to develop a private practice. I didn't know what that was, because when people said like, oh, I have this pain here, and I would say like, oh, do you want me to help you? And if they did, they became my client. And at that time, I was charging like $10 an hour. And I was very apologetic about that, because I have a horrible money story, and maybe I'll get into that a little bit later. But I didn't know that I was developing a private practice. So to following that thread, there is another thread that has to do with brain. But eventually, not only I started to develop that, but I also became a professional singer in drop dancing. And my first voice teacher said, you have no voice, so you can forget about it. But I'm very stubborn, and I went back to her. I didn't know anybody in New York. I was very new. So I went back to that teacher and said, give me a chance, because I had this feeling that I should be singing. So at that time, because of these different mind-body techniques, I got into these different mind-body systems, and I developed some of my own. And she was absolutely flabbergasted that my voice developed really, really quickly. And then I changed teachers, and within a year, I was on stage. So that was because of these techniques that I was developing. And while I was doing that, I had more and more clients. So, but I still was very apologetic, because I had no idea about entrepreneurship. So when people asked me, what do you do? I didn't have a good answer. I said like, well, I do these strange things, but I don't have a job. So, so I remember the moment when it dawned on me that, oh my God, I think I'm in private practice. What is that? And how do you do that? So I remember standing on the street, and like this hit me like a lightning. And I was like, maybe there are some people who know what to do. So luckily, I was able to find some courses and people who introduced me to the basics of entrepreneurship. And so it straightened out my thinking. And I see the same mistakes actually being made by other people who are in the field of holistic healing or different kind of, spiritual modalities and so on. Because I was so focused on content, I thought that it was something really special. It required some kind of special treatment. But actually, what was completely eye-opening when I took my first entrepreneurship course was there are standard steps and procedures that if you apply them, no matter what the content is, you're always going to succeed. So that was fantastic. And when I applied just a few of those steps, my practice really grew every year after that for several years, like 50 to 100%. So that was, hooray for knowing what to do with marketing. So that was the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey. And I fell in love with entrepreneurship. So eventually, when I continued to work with clients, my practice expanded, and I started to teach people some essentials of entrepreneurship. And now I've been in practice for 30 years. And without knowing how to do it or what I was doing, I was able to break through 6 figures. And I've been in 6 figures for more than 10 years. I have a very expensive office and a real live assistant who is getting American salary and not, offshoring salary from India. So I've eventually, just within the last few years, I realized hey, I think I can guide people in their journey, because I've made all the mistakes that people make. And I didn't know how to market. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know anything. But even with those drawbacks, I was able to build my practice, and I'm still in practice. So I thought maybe it's time to start teaching that. So that's been my recent focus, to working especially with women entrepreneurs to break into 6 figures.
And that's great. And that's often some of the things that I see is that the mistakes that people make right now, we're going through, this is going to be ongoing, right? No matter when they hear this episode, we have a new normal, a way that things are changing and we're doing things in our lives. And so I am so glad that I have speakers that are able to teach people what's the right way, the correct way to make these decisions and choices without actually getting in trouble. Because now, you know, with everything 30 years ago, we were able to, you know, and I said I was a teenager at that time, like actually 18. But I was, you know, we were able to get away with certain things that we can't get away with now. Now, if someone starts to practice without, even if they don't know, they can get hit with a very hefty fine. Knowing that I actually have several lawyer friends, some that will be airing coming up soon, being interviewed. But what is some of the things that you can tell us, that mistakes that you made, and how did you correct them?
So let me see which mistakes I should start with. I think
You give
that
us a few.
so I'll get to like the biggest mistake a little bit later. That has to do with the brain, which is my current specialty. But I think the first mistake, and it wasn't really a mistake, I didn't know it was a mistake, but I had a really bad attitude about money, which I inherited from my upbringing, because in communist Poland, money was really a bad topic. You were not supposed to have money. You were a bad person if you had money, and charging was like an evil act. Profit was like horrible. So when I came here, I still had those attitudes, and I remember at that time, my early years, I was also teaching yoga, very spiritual discipline. So someone gave me a tip after yoga class, and I was so indignant that I didn't want to take it because it was spiritual, and money was nothing to do with spirituality. And I was into all these, new age spiritual things at that time. And I think many people still have that attitude that money and spirituality don't blend. So that was one of the mistakes. And I had to really re-educate myself that money is a part of creation. And it's just essentially means of exchange. So over time, I educated myself more, or re-educated how I approached money and thought about money. And I learned to make more money, raise my fees gradually, and accept money, and really also look at numbers, because I'm not a numbers person. And it took me a bit of training to look at numbers and like keep track of what I'm earning, what I'm spending, have a budget. So that's another mistake that I think especially beginning entrepreneurs make, that they are not keeping track of what's coming in, what's going out. And if I ask some of my clients, like, how much money are you actually making? They say, like, I don't know. Well, you have to know. So that was one of the mistakes I needed to educate myself about.
Yeah, and that makes a big, huge difference too. I've seen, for me, that's, one of the first things that I see a lot of people struggle with is the mindset, whether it's around money or just the way that they go about doing their business. Mindset plays a big, huge part in that. You said that you actually got educated and went through some knowledge as far as changing your mindset around money. What were some of the strategies and things that you learned that really helped you change how you viewed money?
So it actually helped me change everything. And this is where we get to the why am I working with the brain? So when I was in that new agey phase, I did all the new agey thing, which are no longer new agey, that everybody's using. So, positive thinking, meditation, affirmations, visualization. My friends are still laughing at me because I used to have Post-its all over my house with, I'm going to be a millionaire by, X year. Well, I'm still not a millionaire. That didn't really work. One of the insights, because I really believed in these things at that time, but one of the insights about that particular thing, like one of my business friends said, like, you cannot become a millionaire working for yourself. You have to have other people working for you. And it was like, what? I don't want to do that. So that took care of that one. But I'm on my way. My plan is to get into seven figures sometime within a year and a half. But So these things, I really believed in these things. I really used them, and they didn't really work, like this this issue with the post-its. So I was looking for better solutions, and eventually I found them when I learned about the brain. And it was such a revelation to understand that the mind is a very small part of how we operate. So uh, most of the brain does not respond to words, and it doesn't think logically. So logic and words and systems and numbers, these are domain of just a small part of your brain called the left brain. So this is the left brain. It loves words, thinking, logic, focus on details and numbers. So all the prescriptions about how you're supposed to succeed or do this or do that or change your mindset have to do with words and sequence. So you need to think this one, think this way, you need to take this step and then that step. And your left brain loves that, but your left brain shuts down under stress. So when you're under any kind of stress, and certainly making money or being in the practice or even just being around family very often is stressful and it shuts down your left brain. So you're stuck with your right brain, and your right brain does not understand these concepts. So you can talk to yourself all you want, and your right brain can't hear that, and you can't implement them because they are still floating around this area, which is not communicating with this area. So that was such a revelation for me that I started to use these brain organizing techniques and exercises, and it changed my mind around money, about success, and about everything else in my life. I learned how to really much overcome my obstacles much faster. So whether it was singing or learning entrepreneurship steps or any other thing that had to do with organizing time, I was horrible with organizing my time in a different way. So I was able to gradually overcome these things, but very quickly because of these new techniques. So I would say my recommendation for all entrepreneurs is to learn what it means to organize your brain. And I'm an expert in it, so I'll be very happy to help you because I can teach you some very unique things that will make a big difference.
Well, let's get into the three mistakes that entrepreneurs are making, and then maybe you can teach us some of those little, like, give us a 1 or 2 step techniques that we can do for the brain. So what is the first, is mindset the first steps that entrepreneurs are making, or is there others?
It has to do with mindset, but it's in a very specific way. So I talked to a number of women about who are in different starting businesses or head businesses in different lines of work. And there's like one common theme that emerges. Women are spending way too much time supporting other people and not stepping into their own limelight because they are supporting other people to be more successful. This is by far the biggest obstacle. I recently did a poll on Facebook to see what women are going to say. They confirmed that. So this answer got the most confirmations that, so this is, women are culturally educated to take care of others and not put themselves first. And this is, I also encountered that in my, not only with my groups, but also in my individual clients. Very often when an issue comes up that they need to put themselves first or they need to do something for themselves rather than for others, they say like, oh, but that will be selfish. Yes, that will be selfish in a healthy way. And again, that the way it relates to how your brain works is there is a part of your brain that in science, it's called the reptilian brain. It's in the back of your head. I call it the behavioral brain. And the behavioral brain is about me. So you have to have a healthy ego. You have to have enough, and I believe me, I learned that the hard way too, because I had no ego. I was trained not to have an ego, not to think of myself. And when I did, I felt really guilty. So I know what that feels like, and I know how to, what that obstacle is. But looking at how the brain works, so that part of the brain takes care of you. The next part of the brain, the emotional brain, which is in this part of your head, takes care of others. And women from the early age are trained to take care of others. So this part of the brain overshadows the other part. And the other part doesn't have enough of a voice. So what is very important, not only to organize your right and left brain, which people know about, but they don't know how to organize it, but also to get those two parts of the brain in balance, because as long as you have overactive emotional brain, you are always going to be looking more for what you can do for others. I'm still have a little bit on that side, but it's much more in balance because I can now also take care of my own needs. But it's such a repeated issue. One woman client after another, like, take care of your needs. My needs? What are my needs? I don't even know what my needs are. so so that's the specific part of mindset that needs to change, and we do that in my programs.
Yeah, and I love that because I actually have found that same thing talking to people. And I often say it's actually selfish for you not to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of you, how can you take care of anyone else? And, when you're talking about the entrepreneur journey and charging for what you're worth, it's kind of like I spend a great deal of time whenever I'm working with a client. That's the very foundational, is helping dealing with the mindset. What's their view about money? How do they feel about, charging for their services, and understanding that we often give way more than what we're worth. And it's not saying that you become sleazy, sneaky, or charge outrageous fees, but you have to understand that when you are for most of us, for women entrepreneurs, if we're seeking seven figures, we actually have something that we want to give back. Like for me, I want to open up a trauma center for teens and a ranch style foster home. So I'm going to shoot for that seven figures so that way I can work with my clients or actually do my nonprofit. So you're still